Many people are unaware that the Bible frequently mentions the origins and history of the Iranian people. The land we now call Iran was once known as Persia, and even further back in history, it was referred to as Elam. This ancient land appears repeatedly in the accounts of the Old Testament, starting as early as the book of Genesis. The presence of Iran in these scriptures is not just a passing reference, but stretches across significant moments in biblical history. From the early days of humanity to the formation of mighty empires, Iran, under various names, directly interacted with the people of Israel. Understanding these relationships is key to interpreting the events described in the Bible. How the ancient Iranians engaged with the Israelites provides crucial context for many of the stories and prophecies within the scriptures. Today, we are going to delve into this history and explore what significance it may have in the prophecies that talk about the end times. Let's start this story in the Bronze Age and follow it through to the rise of Persian rule, covering the period during and after the Babylonian exile. In the book of Genesis, chapter 10, verse 22, the region of Elam is mentioned as one of the first kingdoms to arise after the Great Flood. Elam was located east of the Tigris River, in what is now the southwest of Iran. This strategic location made Elam an important cultural and political center in the ancient world, with significant influence extending into Mesopotamia. Throughout history, Elam played a complex role. Sometimes it was an adversary to the great powers of the region, such as the Babylonians and the Assyrians, and other times it formed alliances with these empires. While the relationships between Elam and the tribes of Israel aren't extensively detailed in ancient texts, we know that the Elamites were contemporaries of the patriarchs and judges of Israel. They mostly appear as enemies in battle narratives, but they were also part of the empires that had a profound impact on Israel's history, shaping its story both as foes and allies during crucial moments. As we explore further into this story, we see that the strengthening of the peoples in the northwest, in what is now Iran, occurred with the rise of the Median Empire, as historian Herodotus tells us. This development took place toward the end of the 6th century BC, a pivotal moment in the formation of new political structures. During this time, for the first time, the various tribes of the region came together under one nation, led by Deos of Gods, a nearly legendary figure often recognized as the founder of the Median dynasty and the Median Empire. When Deos came to power, his main goal was to unite the formerly independent and scattered Median tribes. Through a series of administrative and legal reforms, Deos created a set of laws and a centralized government structure. These changes were crucial in forming a common identity among the tribes, laying the groundwork for a stronger and more unified Median state. This political unification not only strengthened the region internally, but also paved the way for further territorial expansions under the reigns of successors such as Cyaxares and Astyages, who continued expanding the Median influence on the world stage. Before we continue, it's essential to discuss the Assyrian Empire, which at that time was the greatest power in the region. This empire is frequently mentioned in the Old Testament, often as a divine punitive force sent to punish Israel and other nations. The Assyrians were known for their remarkable military and administrative capabilities, which allowed them to expand their territory from the heart of Assyria all the way to Egypt. At the height of their power, their relations with Israel were particularly hostile, marked by campaigns that led to massive deportations and attempts to erase the Israelite identity. It was during Assyrian dominance that the northern kingdom of Israel fell, resulting in the exile of the 10 northern tribes. In addition to their influence over Israel, the Assyrians also advanced into the Iranian plateau, impacting the territories of the Medes, who were temporarily subjugated by their power. However, by the end of the 6th century BC, the Assyrian Empire began to experience its decline due to internal issues such as power struggles, weakened administration, and the growing resistance of the peoples they had conquered. As Assyrian power diminished, the Medes, under the leadership of Cyaxares, began to strengthen, taking advantage of the Assyrians' weakness to expand their territory and increase their influence in the region. Over time, the Medes formed a powerful alliance with the Babylonians, led by Nabopolassar, with the common goal of ending the long Assyrian dominance in the region. This strategic alliance also included other Iranian groups, such as the Scythians and the Cimmerians, who shared the same interest in overthrowing the Assyrians and were ready to join forces in that cause. The Scythians and the Cimmerians, known for their cavalry skills and guerrilla tactics, added significant military strength to the alliance. The struggle against the Assyrians was characterized by numerous intense battles and prolonged sieges, as the allied forces challenged the Assyrian stronghold. In 612 BC, the alliance achieved a major victory with the siege and destruction of Nineveh, the mighty Assyrian capital. This event, predicted by the prophet Isaiah as a divine judgment, marked the end of Nineveh and the beginning of the Assyrian Empire's fall. The collapse of this power opened up a vacuum in the region, allowing new forces to rise, including the Median Persian Empire, which would seize this opportunity to expand and establish itself as a dominant new power. The Medes established their dominance over much of Iran and surrounding regions, while Nabopolassar and his son Nebuchadnezzar II founded the Neo-Babylonian Empire, emerging as a significant power in Mesopotamia. This rise of both the Medes and the Babylonians marked a significant shift in the regional balance of power, directly impacting the political environment in which the Jewish people lived. As we continue to trace the history of the Iranian peoples in the biblical era, it is also essential to address the Neo-Babylonian Empire. The prophet Isaiah had foretold that the Medes would be used by God to bring down Babylon. One of the most notable events of this empire was the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, who became infamous for the destruction of the city of Jerusalem in 586 BC, an event recorded in various historical and prophetic texts of the Old Testament. The fall of Jerusalem led to the destruction of Solomon's temple and the exile of the Jewish people, marking a period of significant theological and cultural consequences for Judah, detailed extensively in the book of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar II implemented a policy of deportation and cultural assimilation, aiming not only to punish Judah, but also to integrate the Jews into his vast empire, thereby reducing any future resistance. Thus, the conquest of Judah was not merely a military action, but also a geopolitical and cultural restructuring of the empire. During this time, the Iranian peoples were undergoing significant change and growth. While the Babylonians focused on consolidating their empire and carrying out military campaigns against Judah and other northern territories, the Medes were strengthening their own rule, setting the stage for a future alliance with the Persians. First under Cyaxares and later under Astyages, the Medes began forming a state that would play a crucial role in the regional politics, laying the foundations for what would later become the mighty Achaemenid Empire under Cyrus the Great. This empire ultimately absorbed both Media and Babylon, becoming one of the greatest powers in history. The rise of the Achaemenid Empire is closely tied to the ascent of Cyrus the Great, who led a Persian revolt against the Medes, resulting in the submission of the last Median king. Cyrus hailed from the legendary Achaemenid dynasty and was renowned for his skill in both diplomacy and warfare, qualities that enabled him to rapidly expand his domain. One of the most famous moments of his reign was the capture of Babylon in 539 BC, when his army took the city with almost no resistance, following a brief siege. The peaceful manner in which Cyrus took Babylon was not only a highly effective military strategy, but also a politically savvy move, as he presented himself to the Babylonians as a liberator rather than a conqueror. This approach allowed him to win the respect of the local population, who saw him as someone coming to free them from oppression, rather than an invading force. Additionally, Cyrus implemented inclusive policies that were notably humanitarian, allowing exiled peoples, including the Jews, to return to their lands and rebuild their temples. This decision not only secured the loyalty of the conquered populations, but also helped stabilize and unify his vast empire. Cyrus became famous for his policy of tolerance, respecting the cultures and religions of the peoples he conquered. This approach was revolutionary for the time, standing in stark contrast to the practices of other empires that tended to impose their culture and religion in an authoritarian manner. The rise to power of Cyrus the Great and the expansion of the Persian Empire were pivotal moments in the biblical narrative, especially concerning the people of Judah. In the book of the prophet Isaiah, Cyrus is referred to as the anointed of God, a crucial figure for fulfilling divine promises. This term, typically reserved for Israelite leaders, is here applied to a foreign king, thus expanding the concept of messianism and providing a broader view of God's plan. In 538 BC, Cyrus issued a decree allowing the exiled Jews to return to their land and rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. an event recorded in the Book of Ezra. This decree not only signified the physical return of the Jews to their homeland, but also the restoration of their religious and cultural identity, which had been deeply affected during their exile. The description of Cyrus as God's anointed shows that God's plan for salvation is wide-reaching and encompasses all nations and peoples, not just Israel. The liberation of the Jews by a Persian king reinforces the idea that God works through all nations and leaders, regardless of their origin, to fulfill his will. The authorization to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem under the rule of the Achaemenid Empire not only restored the Jewish people's identity, but also reinforced the covenant between God and his people, affirming the loyalty and continuity of divine promises. Meanwhile, Judah was undergoing a process of restoration, and the Persian Empire continued to expand and strengthen its power. At its height, the Achaemenid Empire became the largest empire the world had ever seen, controlling over 40% of the world's population. After the death of Cyrus the Great and a brief reign by his son Cambyses II, Darius I ascended to the throne in 522 BC after quelling several rebellions that threatened the stability of the empire. Darius is chiefly remembered for his remarkable administrative skills. He divided the empire into several provinces, each governed by a satrap whom he personally appointed. This new administrative structure greatly increased the efficiency of governance and improved control over the vast territories of the empire. Additionally, Darius standardized the taxation system, which facilitated revenue collection and contributed to the economic stability of the empire. He also invested in the construction of key infrastructures, such as the famous Royal Road, a network of roads that improved communication and trade throughout the empire. During his reign, Darius I further expanded his empire to include parts of India, Thrace, and the Indus Valley. This period of expansion and consolidation coincided with the prophecies of the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, who spiritually guided the people of Judah, and with the rebuilding of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, led by Zerubbabel. This act of restoration was pivotal in renewing the religious identity of the Jewish people and became a significant milestone in their history. After the reign of Darius I, his son Xerxes I ascended to the throne, known in the Bible as King Ahasuerus. The Book of Esther provides a more detailed view of the Persian court and describes a time when the Jews were threatened with extermination by Haman, a high official in Ahasuerus' court. In this context, a young exiled Jewish woman named Hadassah, also known by her Persian name Esther, unexpectedly became Queen of Persia and played a crucial role in saving her people. With great courage and cleverness, Esther uncovered Haman's plot to annihilate the Jews and revealed it to the king, leading to Haman's execution and the promotion of her cousin Mordecai to a position of great influence in the Achaemenid court. The story of Esther not only shows how the Jews were integrated into Persian society, but it also highlights divine providence, demonstrating how God places people in strategic positions to fulfill his plans. This narrative underscores the theme of divine intervention in human affairs, showing how, through seemingly fortuitous circumstances, God can guide his people toward protection and success. Later, with the ascension of Artaxerxes I, the son of Xerxes, to the throne, significant developments continued in the history of the Jews under the Persian Empire, maintaining the royal family's influence over the destiny of the people of Judah. Jewish history in the post-exilic period is marked by the actions of Ezra and Nehemiah. Ezra, a priest and expert in sacred scripture, led the second group of Jews who returned to Jerusalem with the support of King Artaxerxes I. His mission was to revive the Mosaic Law and reorganize the Jewish community, which had lost much of its connection to religious traditions after the long exile. The Book of Ezra details how he worked to restore the religious and cultural life of the people, emphasizing the Torah as the foundation of Jewish identity and practice. Through his leadership, the norms that had defined the Jewish people were reinstated, ensuring their faith remained intact. On the other hand, Nehemiah, who began as a trusted servant of King Artaxerxes I, was appointed governor of Judah. He is especially remembered for leading the reconstruction of the walls of Jerusalem, a project that symbolized the recovery of the city's dignity and security after its destruction during the exile. The rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls was not only about fortification, but also an act of restoring the honor and independence of the Jewish people. During this time, The support provided by Artaxerxes I to the projects of Ezra and Nehemiah demonstrates how the Persian government managed its conquered territories, allowing some local autonomy while maintaining centralized control over the region. This approach enabled the Jews to restructure their religious and political life under the supervision of the Persian Empire. The Persian Empire ultimately gave way to the conquests of Alexander the Great, who in 331 BC overthrew the Persian Empire and established his own dominion, which stretched across vast regions. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals, leading to the formation of three major Hellenistic kingdoms: the Ptolemaic kingdom in Egypt, the Seleucid kingdom in Asia Minor, and the Antigonid kingdom in Macedonia and Greece. The region we now know as Iran came under the rule of the Seleucid Empire, which controlled a large area covering much of the Near East. The Seleucid administration in this territory attempted to implement Hellenization, a process that included the construction of cities in the Greek style, the promotion of Greek customs, and the imposition of Greek religious and cultural practices. However, this policy faced strong resistance from the local populations, who sought to preserve their own religious and cultural traditions. This conflict of interests created constant challenges for the Seleucids, both internally and in their relations with other Hellenistic kingdoms, such as the Ptolemaic and Antigonid realms. Additionally, the cultural and political tensions led to significant uprisings, such as the Maccabean Revolt in Judea, where the Jewish people rebelled against the imposition of Hellenistic culture and the forced religious practices of the Greeks. These conflicts contributed to the instability of the region, as local populations fought to maintain their identity amidst the expansion of Greek influence. By the 1st century BC, the Parthians, an Iranian people, took advantage of the growing dissatisfaction with the Seleucids to create their own empire. Thus, the Parthian Empire emerged as a significant power in the region of Iran. Known for their heavy cavalry and expertise in archery, the Parthians managed to resist both the Romans and the Seleucids. During their reign, the Parthians preserved many of the cultural and religious traditions of ancient Iran, adopting Zoroastrianism as the official religion of the empire. This shift reinforced the Iranian cultural identity, and Zoroastrianism, the most influential and enduring religion of ancient Persia, taught that individuals are responsible for choosing between good and evil, decisions that influence their ultimate fate. Zoroastrianism also emphasized the importance of purification rituals and sacrificial offerings, values deeply reflected in the laws and practices of the Parthian Empire. Furthermore, it stressed moral order and social justice, principles that were embodied in the way the Parthians governed. The influence of this religion not only formed the foundation of spiritual life, but also shaped the political and legal structures of the empire, leaving a lasting imprint on the history of the region. After the fall of the Parthian Empire, the Sassanids established their empire in 224 AD, overthrowing the last Parthian king. The Sassanids revitalized Persian culture and traditions, bringing back and strengthening many elements of the ancient Achaemenid Empire. Under their rule, Iran experienced a cultural renaissance that included the restoration of Persian symbols of power, the reinforcement of Zoroastrianism as the state religion, and the construction of impressive infrastructure in the form of roads and cities. The Sassanids became great rivals to the Roman Empire, and later the Byzantine Empire, standing out for their efficient administrative organization and their ability to defend against external invasions. However, in the early 6th century AD, the Arabs invaded Iran, taking advantage of the weakening Sassanid Empire. This invasion marked the beginning of Islamic rule in the region. The transition to Islam, however, was not instantaneous. It was a gradual process that spanned several generations. Initially, Zoroastrianism remained tolerated, but over time it lost ground to the growing influence of Islam, as many Iranians were drawn to the social and economic benefits and the new power structure that Islam offered. Eventually, Islam became the dominant religion in Iran, profoundly shaping the country's cultural and religious identity and laying the foundation for modern Iran. Thus, it becomes clear that the histories of Iran and Israel have multiple points of contact throughout time. But what else might happen between these two nations, according to the Bible? In certain Christian circles, particularly those who follow a futurist view of biblical eschatology, Iran, the heir to ancient Persia, is frequently mentioned in discussions about prophecies involving Israel. These interpretations are based on biblical passages that many believe predict future events between these nations. A key example is found in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, which speak of a great battle led by Gog of Magog with a coalition of nations against Israel, explicitly mentioning Persia as part of that coalition. However, the details of who Magog is and the meaning of the symbols in these prophecies are subjects of intense debate among scholars and theologians. Some scholars who hold a futurist view of biblical prophecies believe that the references to Persia indicate that modern Iran will play a pivotal role in future conflicts with Israel. This interpretation is influenced by the current political landscape, where tensions between Israel and Iran are a frequent news topic, with Iran seen as one of Israel's main adversaries in the Middle East. Moreover, this discussion also brings to light passages from the Book of Daniel, especially those that speak of the visions of the four world empires and the future coming of the kingdom of God. For example, Daniel 8 describes a confrontation between a ram with two horns, symbolizing the kings of Media and Persia, and a goat representing the king of Greece. Some modern interpretations of these visions associate them with current or future events, suggesting they represent principles or forces still at play today. Many believe that biblical references to Persia, Media, and other ancient nations have parallels with current political and geopolitical dynamics, especially the tensions between Iran and Israel. For some, these prophecies are interpreted as predictions of a future conflict, or even as part of a broader struggle between the forces of good and evil, with significant theological and spiritual implications. Reflecting on the relevance of these visions in the modern context, some scholars suggest that the lessons of the Bible still resonate in the events we are witnessing today. Now it's your turn. Let us know in the comments if you already knew about the origins and history of the Iranian peoples in the Bible. Were any of the connections we explored today surprising to you? And if you found this topic interesting, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any future videos. We'd love to hear your opinion, so make sure to leave a comment and share your thoughts with us. We'll continue exploring these fascinating topics and diving deeper into the stories that have shaped human history. See you in the next video.